At the time, there were no meaderies. So when we switched over, we were the only meadery in the state at the time. Right. It just made logical sense.
With cider, you're taking a locally produced fruit and turning it into a really exceptional product. I think that's the cool thing about it.
Well, here we are not too far from Iowa City, although the mailing address is Iowa City. We're in Johnson County, and we are at Wilson's Orchard, right at the very tail end, almost, of another apple season. This is Paul. Paul, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
talking to people here at Wilson's Orchard, it's almost as if you folks measure time by calendar year and by apple season.
Yeah, that's right.
People will tell me that I've worked here this number of years and this many apple seasons, as if it's its own measure of time.
Yeah, well, we measure trees that way. That's the way we talk about apples, and that's the way we run our lives, really.
So Wilson's Orchard has been around since the 80s, right?
Yeah, about 85 it started.
How did you get started?
Well, so Wilson's Orchard was actually started by an elderly couple.
Okay.
Chug and Joyce Wilson started this.
Wait, there's a guy named Chug behind this place?
Yep, they had a bee in their bonnet to start an orchard, and they did a really intelligent thing, actually. So they knew nothing about growing apples, and they admitted that. I'm the 4th generation apple grower in my family, and I think I know everything about apples, which is always a problem.
Right?
Yeah. But Chug admitted he didn't, so he planted all kinds of apple trees, and then he did a very commonsensical thing. He just tasted them once they produced. If he liked them, he planted more of them. If he didn't, there they sat and they never went any further.
That's not normally how an orchard works.
It isn't. It isn't. It's all about what the supermarkets want and not what tastes good, and that's a big difference.
How many different varieties of apples are you growing here?
We have 120, 130 probably different varieties.
I had no idea there were that many varieties of apples.
10,000 named varieties in America.
You're kidding me.
No.
I read the other day an article about Johnny Appleseed.
Yeah.
Johnny Appleseed, I imagine you said you're a 4th generation.
Yeah.
So you know Johnny Appleseed.
Well, I didn't meet him myself.
Right.
My great-great-granddad probably had a beer with him.
Well, you mentioned that because Johnny Appleseed, we learned the story when we're kids, you learn the story of Johnny Appleseed that he loved trees and he loved nature and he planted apples. I read that the reason he planted all the apples was he wanted to make cider because Johnny Appleseed liked to tip them back.
Well, everybody did. The early pioneers drank more cider than water because it was safe. It had to have some alcohol content to kill the bugs in the water.
Right.
Right? So even when I was a kid, or not when I was a kid, my dad was a kid going to school in 1st grade, people were bringing cider to school.
Alcoholic cider?
Alcoholic cider,
No kidding.
It was diluted down, but it was alcoholic cider, yeah.
What's the difference between the cider that we drink here in this beautiful facility and the cider we drink when we're kids, like the apple cider you get or the cider you put cinnamon in this time of year? What's the difference between those different kinds of cider? Because it's all cider.
Yeah.
How is one safe for kids and the other delicious for adults?
Yeah, so first of all, the exceptionalism of the United States. We're the only one in the world that calls a sweet product cider. Okay? And that came about largely through Prohibition, but cider was always known in America as elsewhere as an alcoholic drink.
Right.
Until the Prohibitionists got a hold of it, and then cider became an unfermented product. Okay, so what we know as cider in the United States and what we at Wilson's Orchard call sweet cider is just apples ground up, squeezed, that's the juice, you drink it, tastes fresh and delicious.
Whereas if you're in Europe and you ask for a cider, that means something completely different.
It's going to put you on your butt. Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So then to that cider, to that just fresh pressed juice, we would basically add yeast and brew it, ferment it, and then it becomes what in England and France and the rest of the world is known as cider.
So once again, our old friend yeast plays a hand in making something wonderful.
Different, well, it doesn't have to be different yeast than, say, the beer world, but the blurb on cider is it's made like a wine, sold like a beer. So, it's a fruit-based alcoholic beverage.
Right.
So we tend to use a lot more of the wine yeast rather than ale yeast or lager yeast or whatever. That are used in the beer industry. So we tend to use stuff that can deal with the kind of pectin levels and that can deal with the intricacies. And most importantly for us is we want to see some of that fruit character come through the fermentation process. So that's why we mess around, not with just with different varieties of apples, but also with different yeasts and different temperature regimes that help. It doesn't taste the same. It's not like you make a Kingston Black cider. It's going to taste like you just bit that apple. It has character directly imparted from that variety of apples.
Well, we've got flights here, a cider flight, and I wanted to kind of go through these because they look delicious. What sort of ABV are we looking at? I'm going to try the Goldfincher, named after the state bird of the great state of Iowa.
It is.
All right, so this is the Goldfinch, just the regular Goldfinch. What kind of ABV am I looking at here?
It's about 4.8. So most of our stuff is in the beer category in Iowa. Right, so it's going to be under 6%.
So the difference between the Goldfinch and the Goldfinch Dry, and these are, of this flight, how many of these are available in stores?
Not the Goldfinch Dry.
So Goldfinch Dry you have to come here for, or find it on tap at your local place, or ask them to put it on tap? I really should have moved on to the Goldfinch Dry, but I can't stop drinking the Goldfinch. Goldfinch Dry is drier because of the...
So our ciders are made, again, sort of in the style of a good white wine, where they will ferment them and then back sweeten with unfermented juice. So Goldfinch Dry has more of an apple that's called Gold Rush, and this is one of the few dessert apples that actually has some tannins to it. So this has a lot more character. I think you can taste that tannic background a little bit more in that.
This seems like I need to take my time with it. This seems like a grown-up version of this.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like I'm picturing just being on the deck and saying, it's good to have land. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just feels like this is a grown-up cider. You really have to come and see it for yourself, but if you don't feel like making the drive, just go to your local grocery store and get yourself some of this delicious cider from Wilson's Orchard. Cannot thank you enough for having us.
No, thanks for having me.
Cheers. I'm going to go back to this Goldfinch. This is dynamite.
If you think of beer as being made with grains, and wine being made with grapes, meat is made with honey. Relatively the same process.